Nicolas Cage had just been forced out of yet another home, an echo of a turmoil he'd lived through before. It's a stark contrast to the life he once led, when the Academy Award winner held the keys to more than a dozen extravagant properties, collectively valued at over $150 million. But that empire collapsed in a financial unraveling that stunned Hollywood. In 2009, his $6.3 million Bel Air mansion was taken by the bank. He was drowning under an $18 million debt tied to that property alone. Yet the foreclosures were only the surface of something far more unsettling. In court records, a darker narrative emerged, one of betrayal. His downfall wasn't orchestrated by some distant figure in the shadows, but by a person he trusted without hesitation, someone with access to every corner of his financial world. And the identity of the individual who dismantled his fortune is as shocking as the scale of the ruin itself. Nicolas Cage entered the world on January 7, 1964, in Long Beach, California, born Nicholas Kim Coppola. His childhood unfolded in a home shaped by artistic devotion and multicultural roots. His father, August Coppola, was a man who treated literature like a living companion, while his mother, Joy Vogelsang, carried herself with a dancer's grace and taught others to express life through movement. Nicholas was the youngest of three boys, a quiet observer in a household stirred by creativity. And outside those walls, the legacy was even larger. The Coppola family name was already woven into Hollywood's fabric. His uncle, Francis Ford Coppola, was reshaping modern cinema. His aunt, Talia Shire, was breathing life into memorable screen characters. Everywhere Nicholas turned, stories were being imagined, filmed, and transformed. Slowly, that environment began molding him too. Then came the fracture. When Nicholas was 6, his parents divorced, splitting the world he knew in two. He spent most of the following years in San Francisco with his mother. Those were heavy days. Joy's struggle with bipolar disorder meant Nicholas often witnessed her drifting into periods of distress. Those moments settled deep within him, silent lessons in compassion, fear, and the fragility of the people we rely on. Despite growing up in a family recognized by Hollywood, he learned early that life could be unpredictable and unstable. That mixture of privilege and pain forged something in him, a capacity to reach into the emotional core of the characters he would one day portray. But alongside the hardship, another force took root. Around 8 years old, he began mimicking the actors he admired. James Dean became his silent mentor. He practiced Dean's walk, studied the tremble in his voice, and recreated scenes for anyone who would watch. In the Coppola gatherings at their Napa Valley home, where creativity was as common as the dinnerware, Nicholas found himself performing for relatives who understood the power of storytelling. Those small performances sparked something electric in him. Acting felt natural, almost inevitable. By 9, he joined a small local theater group and stepped onto the stage as a pirate in a school production. It was a minor role, but it awakened his imagination. Meanwhile, life at home remained turbulent. Money was stretched thin. His mother's health vacillated. Eventually he attended Beverly Hills High School, an institution known for its celebrity alumni, but the reality fell far from the glamour he expected. He was bullied, isolated, and ultimately dropped out. To keep his dreams afloat, he performed in public spaces, street corners, alleys, anywhere he could gather a small audience and a few dollars. At 15, after his mother was hospitalized, Nicholas moved to Los Angeles to live with his father. The transition was difficult, but it opened new doors. He dove headfirst into the punk rock scene as a way of channeling the chaos inside him. He bleached his hair, emulating Elvis Presley, a figure he admired deeply. Elvis influenced the way he spoke, carried himself, and imagined his future. These choices were not mere affectations, they were a teenage attempt to build a self capable of withstanding the world around him. At 16, the intensity only grew. He met Crispin Glover at underground film screenings, and the two became creative partners, challenging each other constantly. Cage immersed himself in method acting. For a role he envisioned about homelessness, he slept in phone booths just to understand the cold, the hunger, and the fatigue. He wasn't chasing attention. He was chasing authenticity. Then, at 17, came a turning point. He auditioned for Rumblefish, a film directed by his uncle, Francis Ford Coppola, and earned a small role playing a drug dealer. But the weight of the Coppola name felt restrictive. So he made a radical decision. He shed it. He adopted the name Nicolas Cage, drawing inspiration from avant-garde composer John Cage and Marvel's Luke Cage. The name represented reinvention, independence, and the career he wanted to build on his own terms. His climb was anything but easy. Dyslexia complicated his teenage years, turning reading into a battle. He learned to memorize lines by sound and sensation, shaping dialogue with instinct rather than text. That approach made his auditions unpredictable, but in time, those surprises would become a hallmark of his acting style. To pay for acting classes at the Beverly Hills Playhouse, he worked odd jobs, including pizza delivery. The Playhouse was a crucible of conflict. Instructors pushed for discipline, while Cage pushed for raw emotion. That friction carved his unique on-screen identity, fierce, unconventional, unforgettable. His personal life fed his craft as well. At 17, he began dating Christina Fulton. Their relationship was passionate and volatile, and the emotional turbulence seeped into his early performances. Real tension became dramatic fuel. Real heartbreak became character depth. All of it, the family legacy, the instability, the rebellion, was shaping a young man determined to create his own cinematic universe. At 18, Cage made his first small breakthrough with a brief appearance in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, 1982. His role as Brad's Bud barely registered in the final cut, overshadowed by Sean Penn and almost entirely removed. Still, the film earned $27 million at the box office, and the director chose to keep Cage's short scene because of the natural rhythm he brought to it. It wasn't fame, but it was a foothold. The real shift came a year later. In 1983, at 19, he landed his first substantial speaking role in Valley Girl. Playing Randy, a rebellious musician, Cage approached the script like wet clay, shaping it through improvisation. What could have been a formulaic teen romance became something lively and unexpected. On a shoestring budget of $500,000, Valley Girl soared to a $10 million box office return, and Cage's unpredictable energy made him impossible to forget. That same year, he returned to Rumblefish, this time as Smokey, a reckless troublemaker. Determined to free himself from the notion that he was simply benefiting from his surname, he pushed his performance to extremes, even overacting deliberately. Critics took notice. Variety described him as a force of nature. The film itself struggled financially, earning only $1.2 million in its opening week against a $10 million budget, but Cage's performance gained a life beyond box office numbers. At 20, he joined the cast of Racing with the Moon, 1984, reuniting with Sean Penn. The film aimed for immersive historical accuracy, set against the backdrop of World War II. But Cage carried his punk sensibilities with him, and the mismatch with the film's tone caused friction. Some scenes had to be red-hot to temper his intensity. Then came one of the wildest chapters in his early career. During Birdie in 1984, at just 20 years old, he pushed himself so far into character that he literally broke his jaw. In a moment meant to capture his character's raw ferocity, he bit into a whole, uncooked chicken and misjudged the force. The result was a fracture that required immediate surgery. The physical agony seeped into his performance, giving it a ghostly, wounded quality the director found mesmerizing. With its $11 million budget, Birdie became part of Hollywood lore, not for its box office, but for the dedication of the young actor who would injure himself for authenticity. That same year, he made another bold choice. In The Cotton Club, a $25 million musical drama directed by his uncle, he turned down safer, more lucrative parts and instead took on a small, volatile role. The film brought in just $14 million, but critics singled him out, describing his work as thrillingly unbalanced. This became the pattern. Cage didn't chase comfort. He chased the truth inside a character, no matter where it led. By 1987, he carried that fire straight into Moonstruck. As Ronnie Camilleri, he was a man whose heartbreak never healed, a man who wore his suffering like an open wound. His confession about losing his hand, and his fiancée, came out with volcanic force, as if the universe itself had betrayed him. Holding up his wooden prosthetic, he erupted with such conviction that the moment burned itself into cinematic memory. The scene, influenced by the expressionistic power of Metropolis, struck a rare balance, tragic, strange, and somehow funny. By the film's release, the Oscar buzz surrounding Cage felt almost visible in the air. Then came Vampire's Kiss in 1988, where he pushed method acting to the edge of reason. He deprived himself of sleep for 48 hours. He rehearsed alone in his hotel room, twisting his body into unnatural shapes. He pursued a kind of madness, a reckless emotional truth, that few actors would even attempt. He infamously swallowed live cockroaches. He ran through the streets screaming that he was a vampire. He begged strangers to stake him through the heart. Drawing from German expressionism and kabuki theater, he exaggerated every movement, every expression, until he transformed into something unsettling and unforgettable. The film bewildered many, frightened some, and ultimately became a cult legend. It was one of the wildest performances Hollywood had ever captured. By 1990, he shifted into Firebirds, a helicopter-driven action film that aimed to match the adrenaline of Top Gun. Cage and Tommy Lee Jones trained with real military pilots, learning to fly actual helicopters. The dangerous aerial sequences you see on screen were performed for real, no miniature models, no CGI. The film made about $17 million on a $25 million budget, but the flying scenes became beloved among aviation enthusiasts. Cage wanted to feel the peril himself, and you can sense that hunger in every frame. Then came a career-defining moment. At 26, he stepped into Wild at Heart. He played Sailor Ripley, an Elvis-obsessed wanderer with a heart that crackled like lightning. When the film premiered at Cannes, it divided the festival like a storm cloud. It won the Palme d'Or. Even as the audience booed loudly, the ceremony became one of the most notorious in festival history. Critics were equally split. Some hailed it as genius, others dismissed it entirely. Roger Ebert famously walked out. Yet people could not stop talking about Cage, the snakes, the unhinged monologues, the electric unpredictability he brought to Sailor. The film earned $14 million on a $10 million budget and grew into a cult favorite, largely because Cage treated the role like a live wire. 2 years later, in 1992, he leapt into Honeymoon in Vegas. As Jack Singer, the anxious groom who jumps out of a plane in his wedding tuxedo, Cage again did something few stars dared. He performed the skydiving stunt himself. The shoot stretched across Las Vegas, New York, and California, starting in August 1991, with a $25 million budget. The film's bright, playful energy, mixed with romance, comedy, and an army of Elvis impersonators, made it a fan favorite. And Cage's fearless mid-air plunge became one of its signature images. But comedy wasn't where he stayed. In 1995, he walked straight into the shadows for Leaving Las Vegas. He shed 30 pounds. He consumed real alcohol in certain scenes. He studied the mannerisms of people who no longer wished to live. His descent as Ben Sanderson felt so real it was painful to watch. Released in October 1995, the film earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor. Director Mike Figgis revealed that Cage even worked with a drinking coach to make the smallest gestures believable. That performance changed the way Hollywood saw him. The quirky rising star was gone. In his place stood one of the most respected actors of his generation. In the midst of these darker roles, he showed an unexpected gentleness in It Could Happen to You, 1994. As Charlie Lang, a cop who promises a waitress half of his lottery winnings after realizing he has no tip money, Cage delivered sincerity instead of spectacle. The $4 million jackpot storyline, paired with the warm 16mm cinematography, gave the film a tender charm. It became a sleeper hit, proving he could anchor a story with kindness as effortlessly as he could with chaos. But not everything was smooth. During Kiss of Death in 1995, Cage clashed with director Barbet Schroeder over last-minute changes. The tension bled into the performance. He improvised threats, pushed scenes to the brink, and nearly derailed moments with his intensity. Critics debated the film's violence, but it was another example of how far he was willing to go, how fiercely he demanded emotional sharpness. Then came one of the strangest chapters of his life. In 1997, Cage purchased a stolen Tyrannosaurus bataar skull for $276,000, outbidding Leonardo DiCaprio in the process. When authorities later discovered the fossil had been illegally taken from Mongolia, he was required to return it. The incident placed him under the scrutiny of the IRS. The fallout led to a $14 million tax settlement and forced him to part with rare collectibles and properties. It became one of the most bizarre celebrity stories of the decade, and a warning sign of the financial chaos that would later consume him. Yet during that same period, he also stepped into some of the most iconic action roles of his career. At 32, Nicolas Cage entered 1996 with a role that seemed engineered for intensity. In The Rock, he became Stanley Goodspeed, a chemical weapons specialist thrust into chaos. To heighten realism, the filmmakers used actual tear gas canisters in one of the film's most harrowing sequences. The shaking in Cage's body, the rapid breathing, the exhaustion in his eyes, none of it was acting. His physical reactions mirrored the real science behind VX nerve agent, a toxin capable of paralyzing muscles and stopping the lungs within seconds. Even the moment when he drives an atropine syringe into his chest followed genuine emergency protocol. The production demanded authenticity, and Cage answered with everything he had. A year later, at 33, he transformed again, this time into Cameron Poe for Con Air. The set was brutal. Under the punishing Nevada sun, temperatures pushed past 100 degrees. Dust storms rolled over Wendover Airfield in Utah, yet the cast and crew pressed on, filming long days in the grit and heat. The movie exploded at the box office, earning $224 million worldwide. Its finale, shot at the Sands Hotel during its actual demolition, blurred the line between movie magic and real-world spectacle. It became, almost instantly, a piece of Hollywood legend. That same year, he dove into Face/Off, a film so ambitious it stretched the boundaries of late 90s special effects. The plot demanded Cage and John Travolta exchange identities and faces. To pull it off, effects teams created silicone masks of both actors with microscopic detail, down to individual pores and hand-placed hairs. The molds were engineered to flex as if alive. Cage wore a cast of his own face and described the experience as surreal, almost hallucinatory. The stunning realism allowed both actors to imitate each other with uncanny precision, cementing the film as a milestone in practical effects history. By 1998, he stepped into City of Angels as Seth, a quiet, contemplative angel who falls deeply in love. Filming the sequence where Seth loses his wings required days suspended on wires and an intense emotional commitment. Meg Ryan would later say Cage carried genuine, aching emotion into every scene. The film wasn't built for awards campaigns, but it found a loyal, long-lasting audience, people who connected to its gentle melancholy. And while the infamous B attack from the Wicker Man wouldn't arrive until 2006, Cage's willingness to take risks had begun long before. In Gone in 60 Seconds, 2000, he crashed 12 cars himself, personally helped coordinate the massive convoy of 50 classic vehicles tearing through downtown Los Angeles, and avoided stunt doubles whenever possible. The large-scale chase sequences took days to orchestrate, and Cage was at the center of every decision. By the early 2000s, he had reached a peak few actors ever touch. There were years when he earned more than $40 million. Years when every major studio pursued him. Years when it seemed he could purchase anything at all, without a second thought. But slowly, almost invisibly at first, the shine began to dull. By 2009, the IRS had filed tax liens totaling $14 million. Cage placed the blame squarely on his business manager, Samuel Levin. He claimed Levin steered him into dangerous real estate ventures, ignored financial warnings, and allowed spending to spiral out of control. Court filings later alleged that Cage lost more than $150 million under Levin's management, including over $6 million in unpaid property taxes. When the dust finally settled, Cage was forced to liquidate nearly his entire fortune. Hollywood insiders called it the most catastrophic tax failure the industry had ever seen. For a time, it felt as if every headline in America had his name in it. Then came the loss of his homes. In 2009, his $6.3 million Bel Air mansion slipped into foreclosure. The estate, nearly 12,000 square feet, had once been listed for $35 million, yet it drew almost no interest at auction. It ultimately sold for just $10.5 million. But that property was only one tile in a collapsing domino line. Cage had once owned 15 extravagant residences spread across the globe, European castles, private islands, sprawling estates filled with art, jewelry, and rare collectibles. Their combined value hovered around $150 million. After the 2008 financial crash, he watched them disappear, often at shocking losses. His Bel Air mansion alone carried 6 separate loans totaling $18 million. Realtors who toured it later described the decor as frat house chic, a final, stinging insult as his real estate empire crumbled. Trouble followed him relentlessly in 2009. A producer sued him for $36.7 million, alleging parts of national treasure had been stolen from his concept. Simultaneously, Cage was pushed to repay more than $5 million related to failed real estate ventures. And in the middle of that chaos, he purchased a $7.7 million pyramid-shaped tomb in New Orleans, often misreported as Egypt, built as his future resting place. The lawsuit was eventually settled quietly, but rumors lingered for years, merging with the story of the tomb into one of the strangest chapters of his public legend. At home, the pressure fractured his personal life. His marriage to Alice Kim, which began in 2004, was strained under the weight of his financial collapse. Cage needed money urgently, so he began selling some of his most treasured possessions. His comic book collection went first. The crown jewel, Action Comics #1, sold for $2,161,000, becoming the first comic in history to break the $2 million mark. His manager encouraged him to part with classic cars and rare collectibles as well. The marriage ultimately ended years later in 2016, but the earliest cracks formed during those desperate months, when debts grew and the world around him seemed to be falling apart. The comic book auction remains one of celebrity culture's most famous sales. His career began showing strain as well. Bangkok Dangerous, 2008, carried a $45 million budget but earned only $15.3 million domestically. Despite opening at #1 with $7.8 million, The Weeknd was so low it became the poorest-performing top film since 2003. The movie dropped sharply afterward, leaving Cage staring at an estimated $42 million loss once marketing was included. Then, in 2011, another blow struck. He was arrested in New Orleans after a drunken argument with Alice Kim, charged with domestic abuse and disturbing the peace. Witnesses claimed he shouted in the street and struck parked cars before being detained. The charges were eventually dropped, but the humiliation fueled late-night jokes and further damaged his public image. By his early 40s, he was already infamous for unusual decisions, both professionally and personally. One of his most peculiar purchases was a $150,000 pet octopus, which he named Cool. Cage said the animal helped him think differently, soothed stress, and kept his creativity alive during difficult years. His home reportedly housed a collection of exotic creatures, including cobras, sharks, and even a two-headed snake. The octopus in particular became a symbol of that surreal period when his imaginative brilliance and private chaos existed side by side. And then, a shift began. In 2018, at 54, Nicolas Cage returned with Mandy, a film that plunged into darkness, violence, and hallucinatory beauty. The movie premiered at Sundance, carrying a modest $5 million budget and earning just $3.9 million at the box office. Yet online, it ignited a storm. Clips of Cage, drenched in tequila and screaming into the night while portraying his character on LSD, went viral. Audiences called it a rebirth, strange, raw, unflinching, and deeply emotional. Suddenly, the conversation around Cage included whispers of awards. Mandy cemented his status as a cult icon and signaled a daring new chapter in his career. 2 years earlier, he had revealed a different facet of his talent in Kick-Ass. At 46, he embodied Big Daddy with a campy, dramatic flair reminiscent of Adam West's Batman. The film, made on a $26 million budget, grossed $96 million worldwide. Scenes and lines from Cage became instantly meme-worthy. He leaned into the absurd, and it worked spectacularly, proving he could embrace comedy and exaggeration with precision. In 2011, Cage returned to action with Drive Angry. With a $5 million budget, he portrayed a man breaking free from hell to rescue his granddaughter. The stunts were real, executed in classic 1969 Dodge Chargers and Chevys, one nearly destroyed during filming. The movie earned $31 million worldwide and reignited his reputation for relentless, hands-on action, the kind of physical commitment his fans adored. Even as he navigated professional peaks, family challenges remained. In 2011, his son Weston filed for bankruptcy. Rehab, legal entanglements, and public breakdowns followed. Court records from 2024 and 2025 revealed Cage had stepped in repeatedly, bailing his son out and providing continued support. His loyalty was both praised and scrutinized, a testament to the complex, often messy realities of family life. Cage's creative output never waned. In 2013, at 49, he lent his voice to Grug and the Croods. With a production budget of $135 million, the film went on to earn $587 million worldwide, becoming one of his most commercially successful ventures in decades. It also helped soften his public image during a tumultuous period. Between 2010 and 2020, he appeared in more than 40 films, proving a tireless dedication to his craft, regardless of critical whispers or personal storms. Rumors of his past continued to fuel his legend. One persistent story claimed that, in the 1990s, he anonymously fathered over 50 children through sperm donation. Whether fact or myth, it added to the aura of Cage as a figure both enigmatic and unpredictable. Then came Pig in 2021. At 57, Cage played a quiet man on a deeply personal quest to recover a lost truffle pig. No explosions, no car chases, just emotion. Critics responded with overwhelming praise, with a 97% rating on Rotten Tomatoes from 268 reviews. Many called it his finest performance in nearly 20 years. Slow, introspective, and intimate, the film reminded audiences of the actor's capacity for nuance, signaling a late-career renaissance. In 2022, at 58, Cage confronted the unbearable weight of massive talent, playing a fictionalized version of himself. The story wove together debt, fading fame, and a bizarre CIA mission, all sparked by a $1 million offer to attend a superfan's birthday party. Blending comedy, nostalgia, and self-awareness, Cage mined humor and humanity from his own history. Fans delighted in the self-parody, and critics applauded the meta-layered performance. In 2023, at 59, he embraced Dracula in Renfield, employing real Fong implants to enhance a performance that was both wild and precise. The film fused horror with comedy, recalling the unhinged energy of Vampire's Kiss. Critics agreed, Cage dominated the screen, reminding audiences why his fearless intensity remains unique. By 2024, Cage's role in The Surfer premiered at South by Southwest. Playing a man facing the loss of his home, Cage poured personal frustration into the character, echoing whispers of his own financial struggles. The performance felt intimate and raw, a convergence of life experience and art. In 2025, at 60, he navigated a legal challenge from his ex, Christina Fulton, regarding their son Weston. The case was eventually dropped, and Cage returned his focus to work. He teased a sequel to Long Legs and immersed himself in his rare book collection, which includes manuscripts dating back to the 13th century. His career had stabilized, balancing studio projects with passion-driven work. By November 2025, Cage had appeared in over 125 films, averaging roughly 4 projects per year since 2010. At his peak, his net worth exceeded $100 million. By 2023, he owed $6.3 million to the IRS but had also sold Action Comics #1 for $2.16 million. Slowly, he rebuilt, and by 2025, estimates placed his wealth between $25 and $40 million, a testament to resilience and perseverance. Odd stories from his past continued to emerge, like his 1990s account to David Letterman of a UFO hovering over his New York apartment, lights moving inexplicably. He credited the experience with inspiring roles exploring aliens and mysteries, a story that both amused and fascinated fans. Cage's personal life remained a whirlwind. His first marriage, to Patricia Arquette in 1995, ended in 2001. In 2002, he married Lisa Marie Presley, a union lasting only 4 months, shocking Elvis fans worldwide. His marriage to Alice Kim, beginning in 2004, lasted until 2016. And in 2019, he married Erica Koike for just 4 days before annulling it. These relationships, sudden and unpredictable, became an inseparable part of Cage's public narrative, a life defined by both brilliance and volatility.